Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to Synchronicity Web TV. I am your host, Nadiya Shah, and this is your moment of synchronicity. Well, today I am so excited to celebrate with you my friend, Kira Sutherland. Now, Kira and I go back like 10 years. I've known her, and she really is the star in astrology, especially where it comes to astrology and health. She really knows her stuff. She certainly carved out a niche for herself as a leader in the field. And so I'm really excited that now my friend is actually coming to my school, Synchronicity University, as part of the March 2022 speaker series. Now, this speaker series is going to have brilliant astrologers, and if you sign up before the end of February 2022, you can actually choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class. And it is Kira that I saw teaching at another organization online, and her topic was so fascinating. She was so brilliant that I was raving about her to my students, and they said, "Oh, tell her to come to our school and teach that as well." And so now here she is, my dear friend, leader in the field of astrology of health, Kira Sutherland. Kira, welcome. Thank you for being here.
God, you make me feel so good. Thank you for having me.
You deserve to feel good, Kira. I tell you, like since I met you, you were just so loving, but I've loved seeing you grow. I love seeing you shine. I love how much you've continued to do within astrology, and especially this niche, certainly the space you've carved out for yourself where it comes to the astrology of health. So how did you find yourself connecting the two? Like what brought you to astrology and the health connection? How did that happen?
Oh, good question. So astrology is kind of a lifelong, well, it's a lifelong love, as I think most astrologers are. One of my mom's, one of her best friends was an astrologer, and she used to just drip feed me stuff as a kid, but I studied formally in my early 20s. And I also in my early 20s went back to school and studied naturopathy. So I'm actually an Australian naturopath, not a North American one. It's slightly different. So I'm a naturopath, nutritionist, herbalist. And when I was studying that, it was still, it's quite a few years ago now, it was still had its beautiful spiritual side to it, naturopathy, not just the science side. But for me, it was missing a connection, or it was missing like a system to put it through. And if, people were graduating and they were off doing traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine, which both use the elements. And I was like, well, our system in the West has been around as long, medicine, and where's our system? And I was luckily studying astrology at the same time, and we had a class on body parts and astrology. And I was like, wait a second, there's a whole side to astrology that's about medicine. It used to be one and the same. So in my early 20s, I was just lucky enough that I was studying them both at the same time. And then as the years have gone, I practice what I call regular astrology, which is the astrology everybody else practices. But I consider it, there's regular astrology and then there's medical. And so I guess from the beginning of astrology, I always was doing medical, and then I'm a health practitioner. So it's such a beautiful tool to use to understand that next level of people. So there you go. There's my slightly long story of how I found it, or it found me.
Yes, we're here to hear your stories.
Yes.
That's the thing, because you are a fascinating person and a loving person. So I'm excited to have this chance to talk to you as well. And people may not realize this, but really, we literally had to stop our personal conversation because Kira and I, once we connect, all the fire awakens. Like she's got a lot of fire in her chart. I've got fire in my chart. Yeah. And the connection just starts happening. So we literally had to say, okay, let's start doing this recording. So I'm very excited to actually listen to you because I think that you're so brilliant. And so those are tinctures in the back there as part of your naturopathy.
Yes, it's actually quite hard to see. Those are massive bottles. They're like, if you do metrics, those are half a liter, those bottles. Yeah, there's about 60 herbal medicine bottles, and this side has some homeopathy, and yes, that's my cupboard of magic behind me. So there's herbs and supplements in there, and I nicknamed her Circe. Have you read the Madeline Miller book, Circe?
No. What is that? Tell me about it.
oh my gosh, most beautiful book. Circe is the name, and I'm not talking Circe from Game of Thrones. That's a different name. Circe is the name of a Greek goddess who was a herbalist. There's a whole story about her and Hermes and Odysseus. She was involved in the story of Odysseus.
Wow. And so I know that I remember learning about how medieval astrologers, like when you went to them and you said like something wasn't right, like they literally looked at your astrology chart at the same time as part of figuring out what was the best way to treat you. So this idea of health and astrology being so interconnected, it is a very well established way of understanding our charts.
Oh yeah, doctors were using it until about 300 and 350 years ago. At the time, religion kind of pushed astrology out of mainstream. It pushed it out of medicine as well. But medical astrology was taught in medical schools in Italy and for years. And it goes back. If you ever see the drawing of, I think we call him Astro Man, but I can't remember, Zodiac Man, where you have the picture of a human with, Aries sitting on the head and the Pisces on the feet. That goes back to Egypt. So, we have a long time of looking at body parts and astrology rulerships. We probably have an even more ancient time of looking at the planets and rulerships of foods and herbal medicines and ailments as well. So, oh my gosh, it goes back forever.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. Actually, I'm thinking about Plato in his work Timaeus. He presents this mystical understanding of the creation of the cosmos. And in Timaeus, Plato is connecting different parts of the sky and different sacred energies to our physical bodies. And actually, me being the nerd that I am, one of my books, which is called The Body and the Cosmos, actually takes the ideas of Plato that he presents in Timaeus and applies it to an astrological sky, applies it to the zodiac. So he wasn't doing that. It's me being the nerd that when I read this and he's talking about the liver, I'm like, oh my God, this is so Sagittarius. Yes. And so that book isn't medical astrology at all. I mean, I know.
I'll have to have a read. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure to send you a copy, or I'll be seeing you actually this summer at the ESAR conference. And
deliver it.
Yes, absolutely. And, we were talking about conferences just before we started recording and how powerful they are. Like, I can't wait to meet my fellow astrologers again. I can't wait to hug you, Kira.
I know.
I know.
I always think about conferences as like going home and seeing your family, but the family that you want to see, not necessarily stressful family. And, conferences they're for the education, but they're for the connection, right? And seeing everybody and what everybody is up to. And it's the conversations outside of the lectures that are so powerful.
Yeah, and having those informal connections with people can be so powerful, but really it's like to not feel like an alien, right? Like you go into this world, and I don't know about you, but in my regular life, before I tell people I'm an astrologer, like if they say, what do you do? I sort of take a little bit of a pause and think, okay, how much do I want to share? Just because,
absolutely.
It's so bohemian to some people, right? So
I know, but it's not even that. It's not even that I'm embarrassed. It's such a sacred part of who I am. Wow. I don't always want to give that to people if I think I'm going to come up against issues or judgment. I'm like, I don't need to deal with that because I love what I do. So I'm the same. But being a naturopath and an astrologer, I can easily just go down, and that's, being a naturopath is already alternative. And I'm like, well, how far do I want to take them into my alternative world? But I will often just say nutritionist, sports nutritionist, so that if I don't feel like sharing my sacred side. Yeah.
Oh, that is so powerful.
I have a friend that I joke about it with, because I actually have two totally different websites, just because it's easier to keep them separate, even though I blend everything. And I talk about, I have my science side and I have my sacred side, although they're completely bridged.
Wow, the sacred side. I never looked at it that way, but I think you are so right. Like what we do at least for me, I consider it a spiritual practice. And yes, I consider it sacred. And you're so right. Like wanting to protect that and wanting to show it the reverence. Sometimes that means not necessarily announcing from the rooftops exactly what it is that I do. And that's okay as well. I mean, astrology is classified as an esoteric practice after all, which is like sort of a hidden art, hidden science.
So true. And I just don't, it's funny because people are like, are you hiding it? And I'm like, no, I'm just choosing who I have that conversation with because I don't feel like dealing with the judgment. And I'm not, this is going to sound very un-Aquarian of me, and I'm not an Aquarian, but it's very 11th house, I should say more. It's not my job to convince people of anything in this lifetime. My job in this lifetime is to teach people that are willing to listen and absorb rather than I'm not on a political agenda of having to prove anything. Yeah.
Oh, that's such a brilliant way to put it. I absolutely love that. Yeah. My mom says to me sometimes, it's not your job to save the world or to save everybody. And because I have that part of me that wants to help people so much. And I love like bringing out the best in people. I love helping people to shine. It's so much a part of what I feel I'm here to do. But yeah, sometimes people, like they just aren't in that space to receive. And that's okay as well. People know what it is that they need. But this idea of not being able to save everybody, I really had to learn that spiritual lesson to just do my best and surrender the rest.
Yeah, I'm like that. I think you and I are similar in that way. But absolutely. I would love to help everyone. But somewhere along the line in learning to be a healer and a practitioner, it was like, you know what? I have information if you want it and you want to use it and we can have that dialogue. That's incredible. And if you're not ready or if you don't like what I do, that's okay for me.
Yeah.
But it took me
my business.
It took me a while to learn that one. I think once you turn 50, mind you, I'm 52, but
yay. Look at you. You don't look a day over whatever a spring chicken
17,
would look like.
17. And I probably got to this point long before 50, but especially at 50, when you're just like, you know what, this is what I'm doing and whatever. I'm just, you either want it or you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. I think that's one of the things I love about getting older as well, is that you just kind of know yourself more. And there's a lot of freedom in that, right? But look at you. You are radiant. I mean, talk about the perfect picture of astrology of health. You really are so radiant. And so I mentioned in the intro that I'd seen your very brilliant teaching in one of the orgs, and your class was so brilliant. And so you, as part of the class, you'll be teaching with Synchronicity University. So once again, this is part of the March 2022 speaker series. And if you sign up before the end of February, you can choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class. Well, Kira is going to be teaching on the connection between the first and the sixth. So how do you understand the houses of the first and the sixth and their connection to each other?
Yeah. So the first and this, I love the houses. As controversial as they are, I don't care what house system anyone's using. That's irrelevant for me. But the houses themselves, I wasn't even taught to be a house-focused astrologer, but doing medical astrology, I've become this very house-focused person of what is that platform that the houses are teaching you? And because we experience, ailments come from your sign and from your planets and transits and things like that, but so do your strengths. You've got your health, your constitutional strengths and weaknesses. But I find the houses are such that stage where things happen. They can be the zone of the body. And, the first house, everyone always studies the ascendant and it's the filter we use and all that kind of stuff. But the first house in the ascendant is your physical body. It's where we meet the world and the universe. And so when we're stressed, because no one's ever stressed in 2022, when we're stressed, when we're, anything to do with stress in the physical body ricochets us right back to that ascendant, and how we meet the world is through that physical body in that first house. So I'm a big focus on what's happening in your first, whether there's planets or transits, but just that ascendant itself is where we often also have our weaknesses. And that's an area that it's one of the two areas that needs the greatest support medically, is that first house ascendant. And then we have the sixth house, which is the traditional house of disease or ill health, if we go back in traditional astrology. But moving that into modern times, we also need to look at the sixth house as the house of daily routine and ritual and of service. What's of service to others, but it's how we're of service in the world. And we actually need to be of service to our own health. And so I see the sixth house very much as, yes, house of illness, but also how we have to take care of ourselves in a mundane daily life way. And so using those two houses is just so powerful. And then if you want to go more advanced, it's not advanced, but if you want to look at aspects, they're quincunx each other, which is an uncomfortable aspect that's hard to flow between those two. And that can often cause ailments as well. So you trying to balance between the first and the sixth is really, well, we can't, it's not balanceable. I'm going to make up words today. It's, they're not opposite each other. It's quincunx. So there's that awkwardness of placating the first and placating the sixth. And the sixth has so much to do with food and how we digest. And that is the basis for all of our health, even though people don't really want to admit that. So that's how I want to focus for the talk, and how I want to really synthesize that information of how do we better take care of ourselves to have better health? Because there's no one that wants poor health.
Yeah, absolutely. Often health is one of those things that we don't really think about so much until we have to. And we have to because something's off, whether it's considered off balance or something's not connecting. And so it's very interesting that you are connecting the first and the sixth, because I remember many, many years ago as a little baby astrologer, hearing a speaker once say that if the first house is okay, the person's going to be okay. Even if the sixth house is besieged and lots of bad things are happening in the sixth or the eighth, if the first house is strong, that person's going to be okay. And I'm thinking about, in particular, my dad. Now, my dad and I both have Sag on the cusp of the sixth house. And when I was a little girl, my dad used to make this thing for me called churi. And what churi is basically like roti, which is fried.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Love roti.
So roti, for those of you who don't know, it's basically like a type of bread, a South Asian type of bread. And then it's fried in oil to make what's called paratha. But then churi is you take that and you shred it and you dip it in sugar really, really well. And then you eat these shreds. Okay. This is the food I grew up eating.
Yum. And a Sag on the sixth would be like, yeah, I'll take some more of that.
Oh, yes.
Carbon sugar.
And
needed to add some fat onto it as well. So, it was done in oil. It was done in oil. There's fat.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, yes. There's fat. There's something about the combination of fat and sugar that makes it especially addictive to us, right? But anyways, when I was a kid, I was overweight, and I have Cancer rising, Saturn in the first. And so I was constantly put on diets. And one of the things that happened when I became an adult was I cannot be on any kind of restrictive diet at all. Like I need to be freewheeling where it comes to how I eat. And the days when I can't be freewheeling, like perhaps I'm sick and I can only eat chicken broth or something, those are very sad days for me. Very sad days, I'll tell you.
But it's that Sag energy, whether it's Sag, because the sixth house cusp is very much how we want to do food and how we want to do eating. The most amazing author on this topic, who's passed away in the 80s, is Robert Jansky. And I will present some of his material when I do, and then my abbreviation of his material. He wrote an incredible chapter on how we eat via this cusp of the sixth. And whether you're Sag on the cusp of the sixth, Sag sun, Sag moon, Sag rising, whenever one of those people walks in my door and they're like, I need to lose weight, I'm like, that's lovely. We have to figure out how you're going to do that without being on a diet, because the minute you restrict that Sagittarian, that Jupiter energy, they're like, and that will last for 12 hours, So it's you have to figure out how they can feel unbound while eating healthy. And Sag is tricky like that. And then adding in a Cancer rising, as you said. It's, because food is connected to emotions.
It's so interesting that you mentioned all that you did with Sag on the cusp of the sixth house. Now, I have to say, my dad also has Sag on the cusp of the sixth house, as I mentioned. Very indulgent. I learned my indulgent eating and love for sugar from him. He's also got Jupiter in the sixth house, though. And considering all the things that he has indulged in over his life, it is incredible how he is so strong. Like, I just see him as so strong. His weight fluctuates a lot. He's developed type 2 diabetes. And I hope it's okay, Dad, that I mentioned that. She is an expert, so it should be okay.
Yeah, it's funny. If my mom knew how often I use her chart in medical astrology, it's never named, but yeah, she's got a great chart, for example. But, Jupiter, it's a benefic, right? In traditional astrology, we put a benefic in the sixth house. That's a great placement, and it does bring robust health. But you have to look at it in a modern view as well. And Jupiter is excessive and overdoing it, and it rules the liver. And as much as people think about the liver and the liver does like 2,000 different things every day, and it processes everything. And oh my gosh, the liver's this amazing organ. But too much fats get stuck in the liver, and the liver is very connected. We often don't think of the liver with digestion, but it's, intricate in the digestive process, and it runs in tandem with the pancreas. And the pancreas, by rulership, there's kind of contention of who gets rulership of the pancreas. The way I see the pancreas is it's very Virgo Sag. Or let's just give it to the mutables, that they have a bit of trouble. Not trouble with pancreas, but they push the pancreas, and that's type 2 diabetes for some. So, I do see type 2 diabetes more frequently in Sagittarians. It's not that they're are they prone to it. They love life so much that the pancreas and liver get pushed, and they get tired. They're tired. It's a tired pancreas with the Sag.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And the pancreas is so intimately involved in diabetes, for example. And so, of course, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's those mutables, whether it's a mutable house or a mutable sign, they don't want to be contained, right? That's that whole, they can be good for a while, but then they fall off, or they're, they just go with that flow rather than that strictness of, Saturn or a fixed. And so they do have more trouble with food. They will, the overeaters of the zodiac are the Sagittarius, because they're enjoying themselves too much. And if you say you can't have pleasure, they're like, well, what's the point in me being here?
Exactly.
You've got Cancer who overeat because, it's a whole lecture in itself, but food is emotions. If we look at the stomach, the rulership of the stomach is Cancer and the moon, but the moon rules your emotions, but it also rules food. So how, you can't separate that. And we now know, I love that we've connected these thousands of years ago, but in modern medicine, we now know our digestive system makes our digestive system contains our immune system, which is very Virgo Pisces, but we also make a lot of neurotransmitters in our digestive system, and neurotransmitters kind of tell the body what to do and how we feel. And we make like serotonin, which makes us feel good, most of it's made in our digestive system, and it's affected by the food we eat. And so we can link up the food you eat actually influences how you feel, not just physically, but emotionally. And we can see that in science now, but we've always known that in medical astrology, which is just so beautiful. But yeah, the Cancers and connection to food. And other overeaters are Pisces, actually, because they don't know when to feel full. If we talk about fish, remember when your parents buy you a fish because that's your first pet, because it does matter if you kill a fish, but they trial us on fish, and they're like, just give a fish this much food per day, right? And because if you overfeed a fish, what does it do? A fish will just keep eating until it dies. And so what happens, and I'm not saying Pisces are going to do that, but they don't feel full. They have a really hard time registering when to stop. And And they'll use food as a bit of protection of not feeling all their feels. So yeah, those are some of the bigger signs with issues around when to stop eating.
Well, I've got a healthy dose of all those energies in my chart.
I know. I have two of those three.
Yeah. So it's all good. It's interesting that each sign has its own approach to understanding eating and how that balances out with the ascendant. I mean, it's just fascinating how you put them together. And I'm just really looking forward to your class, Kira. And so once again, everybody out there, remember Kira is coming to the March 2022 speaker series. Yay, at Synchronicity University. Until the end of February, you can choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class. Well, thank you, Kira, for being here. I loved talking to you.
Yep. It's always, thank you for having me.
Really. You're a friend. You're an ally. You're a comrade. You're a fellow astrologer. You're so much, and you're just amazing. And I love you so much.
Aww. And
I'm really, really excited about your class, Kira. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And I will see you soon. And I'm really excited to teach the class and be involved in your school. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everybody out there for watching. And until we connect again, take care. Bye.